At the same time that President Obama is considering lifting the number of refugees we would take into the United States, Fox News is rolling out a network-wide campaign to paint those refugees as potential terrorists.
You know, it was a couple of months ago that ISIS threatened to send 500,000 migrants to Europe as a psychological weapon, which means there could be bad guys in there with the good guys as well.
A new video surfaces online showing why some are worried Europe is opening its doors to potential terrorists.
And while this crisis is happening overseas, some are saying it poses a potential threat to the United States.
Many of them are Muslims coming from Muslim countries.
Should we really be opening our doors at the risk of letting in terrorists?
Taking Islamic refugees would be suicide.
They're going to be radicalized.
A lot of the people that I've been watching on television, it's men. There aren't that many women, relatively speaking.
Men. Syrian men are coming.
To absorb 65,000 or more Islamic refugees into the country?
And it's almost 100% men.
So I can't support a policy that would provide a jihadist pipeline into the United States.
What could possibly go wrong with poor, starving, Muslim, alienated men?
So now we have one of the biggest mass migrations in the history of the world, which is overwhelming and will allow terrorists entry into almost every Western country.
I'm sure many of them are very good people. But do you think some radicals might be mixed in with them? Is that a fear that we should take seriously?
But does it not leave an opening for terrorists, those to blend in inside them through a pipeline to either get to Europe or the United States?
They are going to be easily radicalized. I don't think it should be done here.
But number one, it's a national security issue. It would be suicide.
Those are reportedly Muslim refugees on a train in Europe chanting Allah Akbar or God is great. Now, to be clear, we're not saying that any of those people are terrorists or in any way affiliated with a terror group, but it does highlight just how many of these refugees who are fleeing violence in Iraq and Syria are Muslim.
They're not saying they're terrorists. They're not saying it at all.
Great.
They just want to make you piss your pants as you sit watching Fox News.
The graphics there said terrifying chant. So again, and they even translated it. Allahu Akbar means in Arabic, God is great.
Yeah.
So can you imagine if liberals here in this country called a Christian chanting God is great, hallelujah, terrifying chant.
Yeah, when Kim Davis and Huckabee had their hands in the air as they were looking at Jesus' feet, I guess.
Praise Jesus.
Terrifying chant. Terrifying ritual.
Praise Jesus.
I think it's more like the equivalent of like if someone just pulled you out from drowning, you were like, thank God.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
that's all it is. That's all it is.
Yeah, and you know what they have? They should be thanking God. Like, they're leaving a place that they were willing to risk their lives to leave because they thought death, starvation, misery was imminent, and they get to go to Europe now. And so they're saying, Allahu Akbar.
Yeah, they're saying Allahu Akbar because they're running from ISIS, and they're running from Bashar Assad backed by the Iranians.
Right.
So they're like, thank God we left those guys behind, right? And then the other graphic they had there was inbound terrorists. We're not saying anything. We're just asking a question. Are all these Muslims inbound terrorists? I didn't say anything against Muslims. I'm just saying they're male, they're Muslim. I didn't say a word.
And John, you pointed this out, how Hannity quoted Trump to Trump. I'm sure some of them are okay.
He really wants to be liked by that guy. But we were talking on Wednesday, and I were talking about the different ways that humans have trained themselves to not care about groups of people. I mean, the fact that they just say, oh, Islamic refugees, well, of course we shouldn't care about them. They're Islamic refugees. And, oh, there could be terrorists. Look, if we bring in 65,000, which, by the way, that's like the sheer number of refugees we take in, not from Syria, there probably will be a terrorist or two or people who will be radicalized at some point. That does not exempt ourselves from the responsibility that we have as humans, as people who share a species with the people in those little boats, to help them out. And to Eric Bolling, who's saying, you know, what could possibly happen if you have poor, sick people, men? They're going to be radicalized. Here's how they might be radicalized a little bit better, is if they don't get in here and they have to go back to fucking Syria. And they're even poorer and even more starving, and the only people that might be able to feed them are ISIS or other radical groups.
I don't know how I mean, what got me in the middle of his thing is we're going to take poor, starving. I'm like, Jesus, they're starving, we should help them.
Yeah, what he said was literally what is inscribed in front of the Statue of Liberty.
You're starving, and we can help them.
I actually think we should bring more of them here instead of Europe.
What's the
then they might, Wes, that's a crazy idiot, because then they might be grateful to us instead of really pissed at us.
How about we feed them and clothe them and then have them realize, oh shit, fucking Islamic radicalists, they killed my family and they sent me running. The U.S. helped my family.
Yeah. So how many are we going to take? How many?
He said he wanted to raise the total number.
60,000 or something.
It's at 65. He wants to raise it to 70. But again, this is not just from Syria. This is from
we already take 65. He's just proposing to take 5,000 more. That's it. Out of hundreds of thousands, in fact, millions.
But hold on.
Yeah, but in a country of, what is this? We got 10,000 people in this country? That's a lot.
But the 65,000 we take now, that's refugees from around the world that we always take. A willingness every year we're willing to take 65,000. He's saying take 7,000, take 5,000 more because of this massive influx.
That's right. Yeah, and to give you again context, Lebanon took 1 million refugees, and that's a quarter of their population. We have over 300 million people here. We're talking about 5,000 extra people, and all the refugees, there are possible problems. By the way, these are the same guys that say never forget. But remember, we also turned down refugees in another crisis a long time ago because we were worried.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, well, we forgot, huh? Well, that's weird.
And by the way, I don't really like this argument much, but I'm going to make it anyway. Because was that Andrea Tantaros in that?
Yeah.
She's just the way she's like, so we're going to take 70,000 Islamic refugees, just substitute any other religion there, and just how hideous that sounds. We're going to take 70,000 Jewish refugees, 70,000 Christian refugees. Come on, everybody would be outraged. And these are the people, I'm sorry, man, but who do you think ISIS is killing?
Yeah.
They're killing,
those guys.
They're killing them.
That's why they're running.
Yeah, the only reason they're not dead is because they left.
And then finally, Sylvia Longmire made a good point, ironically, on Fox News. As they're spitting out all Islamic refugees and there's a pipeline. She was an expert that they brought on, apparently accidentally, and she said, if ISIS wants to send people here, they have a lot of money. You could just buy a plane ticket. The way that most terrorists come over is through planes, or if they're going to Europe, they just take a train, and they have the money to manufacture papers, or oftentimes they get someone with no criminal record. It's super easy for them to come in. And then the Fox host is like, what about the porous Mexican border, right? They're like, no, usually they just drive in from Canada because that's much easier, right? So these are the people who are poor and don't have the ability to do any of that stuff. So if ISIS wanted to send people in, just fly them in, right? It's usually much easier. In order to get accepted as a refugee, you have to go through an enormous bureaucratic process. It's almost the hardest way to get here. You think ISIS is going to put them in a truck where half of them are going to die from? ISIS has a lot of money. They have oil money. They don't need to do any of this. These guys are knuckleheads. And what would they do? They want Fortress America. They want to build gigantic walls and make sure nobody comes from me. But I'll tell you what, they might have been right. Maybe if we had done this decades ago, we wouldn't have let one of these sons of bitch Syrian refugees in here who wound up being Steve Jobs' dad.
Yeah.
Oh, oops.
Yeah.
Right. And that's one of my favorite facts. So Steve Jobs' dad is Syrian. They love Apple. They're like, #1 company in the world, #1 company. We're #1, America's #1. How do we get to be #1? Because we let other people in who turned out to be a great benefit and made this country great.
Yeah.
He was raised by white people, just to be clear.
Melting pot. Melting pot. We all help.
I just love the idea of the boat of the Syrian refugees. After weeks, they're starving, they have no water, they finally hit the shore, and Jesus just puts his foot in it and just pushes it back in the water. That's their Christianity.